Then look at verse 15. We're going to talk a little bit about trees now. We talked about judges. This 13 and 14 deals with pilgrims. In other words, those who are passing through, who are not here forever. It kind of deals with some of what he's talking about, verse 13 and 14. Those who choose a narrow way are pilgrims. They're among the oddballs in this world. Anyway, verse 15. Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. You shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? Even so, every good tree brings forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree brings forth evil fruit. A good tree can't bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that brings not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Wherefore, by their fruits you shall know them. Now, verse 15 automatically is a judgment call. Verse 15 is a judgment call. There's a judgment call regarding accountability and responsibility. A judgment call. He says, beware of false prophets. We as Christians, not just pastors, we as Christians have an obligation to have a discerning mind and heart and spirit, and to discern false prophets. Discern those who are preaching and teaching another gospel. A judgment call. You've got to make a judgment call. A false prophet will come along and say, well, judge not lest ye be judged. You can't judge me. Oh, I beg to differ. I can judge you if you're spreading false gospel. If you're spreading lies about my Lord, I have a right and an obligation to discern you and find out who and what you are all about. Beware, he says, of false prophets. Well, if you got to beware of false prophets, you got to have a discerning heart. If you're going to beware of false prophets, you got to have a heart that's going to make the right kind of judgment call there. Beware of false prophets is said in the sternest of measures. Listen, the Lord was not playing. He was not just casually saying these things as he was talking. Well, here's something else. Beware of false prophets. No, he was being very stern. When he used that word beware, as it's translated in the English beware, it was a very stern word. Watch out for. You be on your guard. You discern. You make sure you are beware of and you are aware of these false prophets. He says there will be false prophets. He says there's some of Satan's greatest weapons. Some of his greatest weapons, even right now, are false prophets. We've got so many in pulpits across this nation right now, this very moment, across this country, who are standing up and smiling. And nothing wrong with smiling. But what's behind that smile? They're smiling, saying, well, God is a good God. He is a good God. And God wants what's best for you. I believe that. I believe he does. And God's just going to make you an overnight success. That's what a record scratcher. They start peddling this false gospel that says that God's a big sugar daddy. God's a big Santa Claus in the sky, just wanting to just shower you. No. God is not any of that. God is God. And he oversees everything, good, bad, pretty, or ugly. And he has his hand on everything. So, one of Satan's greatest weapons is false prophets. Life produces fruit. The life of God produces fruit. Good trees, he says, produce good fruit. He says a bad tree can't produce good fruit. Stands to reason. He says a good tree is going to produce good fruit. There was a great deal of profession in the lives, for instance, of the Pharisees and the scribes who he was addressing here, but there was no evidence of spiritual fruit. They could talk a good game sometimes, but there was no evidence of any spiritual fruit in their life whatsoever. There are many false prophets who pretend to be Christian guides. There's this thing now, and I'm not saying everybody does this as a false prophet. I'm not saying there's anything innately wrong with it. But now we've got, in the church world and the business world, we've got this thing about coaching. you have what's called life coaches. You know, someone to coach you through the difficulties of life and to coach you. And listen, it's okay to have people cheering you. It's okay to have people supporting you, and have people helping you out, things like that. But let me tell you what, Jesus wasn't just a life coach. He was much more than that. And he spoke sternly when he dealt with this subject, this topic. These false prophets pretended to be Christian guides whose real purpose was very selfish and very destructive.